The Pope is dead. The throne of the Holy See is vacant. Well, Dean, it seems the responsibility of the Conclave falls on you. Conclave is based on a book by Robert Harris and was directed by Edward Berger, who did the most recent edition of All Quiet on the Western Front. Not the 1930s version, because that would have been really hard because he wasn't born yet. But nevertheless, you can check out his IMDb page for the full list of his work, and this was adapted from said book by Robert Harris by Peter Strahan, who did Frank. He also did The Snowman, a film I didn't really like. It was really messy, tonally inconsistent. I don't really understand what the fuck they were doing there. He also did Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, which was really, really goddamn good. And also he did The Debt, and he's done some other projects. And this stars Ralph Fiennes. I keep wanting to say Ralph Fiennes, because that's how it's spelled. He plays Lawrence, who is part of the Catholic Church. And he's very well thought of. Well thought of to the point that he does know His Holiness, but His Holiness has passed away. There's some history as far as the various cardinals and the various people that are going to be involved in this conclave, aka the voting process to decide who will be the next pope. Will we have another pope brought forth, or will we just continue to be locked into this conclave, and will, division, will unrest, and will massive amounts of ego continue to plague the church? Basically, Lawrence ends up discovering something that could fracture the very foundation of the Catholic Church. Not anything to do with the numerous sex scandals and the numerous other things, but this is something that could rock the church to its very core. So, I heard a lot about Conclave. It's gotten a lot of praise from film festival crowds and a lot of praise from Rotten Tomatoes and just other sites from various people that have been able to see it. It just came out, and even though I worked a 9-hour shift today, I did decide that I was going to, say 6 days in a row, a 9-hour shift to cap that off. I'm going to drive about 20 miles down to a theater for a late show and check out this drama with some, thrills and a great goddamn cast to see how this film actually is. Is it as absorbing as many people say? And taking a look at the cast, you have John Lithgow, Stanley Tucci, you have other people whose names I'm probably going to goddamn screw up. But first, Isabella Rossellini, who is great, has been great in some stuff lately. I mean, I'm just so happy that she is still getting some good roles. And you also have Lucien Masmadi. If I said that wrong, I apologize. He plays a guy I'm just going to call Ade. It's Adeyyemi. And also, there's a character, Wozenak, played by Jacek Koman. And there's a lot of really, really good, performances in this. Brian F. O'Byrne is in this, as well as Sergio Castelletto, who at first I thought was Jean Reno because of the beard and everything. I was like, oh, Jean Reno. Oh, it's not Jean Reno. But this guy's pretty good. He actually does a good job. And also somebody that ends up factoring into, various, parts of the story. A character by the name of Benitez, played by Carlos Diaz, who I do have to say delivers a really good performance, including some lines I'm going to talk about in the spoiler section a little bit later on. But as somebody that is not religious, quite frankly, I think that the Holy Scripture and everything and the books are fucking bullshit, to the point that I decided to get this sweet shirt. Because if we're being honest, that's basically what the Bible fucking is. And I mean, I'm not knocking, by the way, if you guys use the holy teachings to live a good life and teach people well, and don't use it for hatred, division, like so many other people do to justify their bigotry, their hatred, and so many other poisonous traits that every human has. Lord knows I do. I ain't gonna apologize for that shit. That being said, if you use it right, then that's great. Now, if you are religious, you might not like this movie. You might actually think that this movie, quite frankly, is blasphemous and terrible and everything, especially with how it weaves a few things in and out. And the conclusion, I think, in particular, will piss a lot of religious people off. At least those that, again, aren't using the holy teachings the right way. I used to go to Sunday school. I used to do that shit. I hated it, by the way, because we watched the same, 3 Disney movies over and over, and believe me, you see the animated Robin Hood enough, you are going to get pissed off. But that being said, based on just the hype and the fact that you have such a great cast in this, I do want to praise the cinematography. There are some lush shots, the great use of color, the sweeping, just the fact that we're basically on the church grounds. And there's some other stuff going on around, like, as far as division and other things that will factor into how this vote goes on. And basically the idea is a majority vote is needed from these various people that, these various cardinals, all these holy people that have been brought from various forms, and everybody has their own clique. Everybody has their own subsection, shall we say. And everybody has their own ideas about who they think should be the one, to take over, the seat of the Pope. There's Stanley Tucci's Bellini, who does have some progressive views. Stanley Tucci, by the way, tremendous. Fucking tremendous. I am so glad that he is getting even more attention with stuff like this, though he has had some great roles in the past. Ralph Fiennes, to me, is the fucking standout. This is Oscar-worthy shit. Yeah, in case you can't figure out, I'm going to praise this movie to the heavens, ironically. Because this movie is absolutely worth the fact that I paid full price, decided to drive to a Lowe's theater because I have the Regal monthly pass because I don't live near a Lowe's. I decided to pay the full price and decided to sit down. I think there were maybe 10 other people in the theater. It was late at night, 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday. But from the very beginning, the music absolutely draws you in, the atmosphere. Ralph Fiennes being conflicted as Lawrence, and the fact that he had, audiences, and he had, talks with His Holiness, but there was talks about, like, a crisis of faith, this kind of thing. And that's a particular theme that comes up, and the fact that there are certain characters in this that obviously are out for their own means, out for their own, motive. They have their own motives as to why they want to be the Pope or why they want their favorite to be the Pope. I didn't think this was going to be that absorbing. This turned out to be one of the most absorbing fucking movies that I've seen of this decade so far. I fucking loved it. I had a goddamn blast. I could see the conclusion again pissing people off, but Lithgow was really great. And Lithgow, to me, just seeing, Third Rock from the Sun, I mean, obviously he'd been in stuff before that. Cliffhanger, him playing the villain, but just Lithgow really had a layered, character here. But Lucien as Ade, as I'm going to call him, he was really, really good. There's one particular scene with his where it's like, everything comes home to roost. And, just so to speak, with his character and just various others and everything, because the dominoes start to fall, so to speak. And you have to wonder, is there a reason? What did His Holiness know? What is actually going on here? And it all centers around, Ralph Fiennes' Lawrence. And also the fact that Benitez is there. And we find out that, he may have found a way, maybe he wormed his way in because there's something weird about his character. Like, he's a cardinal that nobody really knew about, but he has history. Used to be in a war, all this stuff. A lot of really good layers to the characters. Isabella Rossellini, in particular, delivers a really, really good piece of business, good piece of dialogue. About 30 minutes to the end of the movie, somewhere around that. Isabella Rossellini, by the way, her career, her filmography speaks for itself. She was great in this. But Ralph Fiennes, to me, Oscar-worthy shit here. But honestly, really, really good stuff here. I really had a lot of fun with this. Carlos was very, very good as Benitez. And I'm going to get into spoilers. I do apologize, by the way, if my voice does sound a bit rough. Weather change, and it's affecting, it's affecting everybody and everything. We're getting kind of cold here because I'm in the Pacific Northwest, in case you didn't know. But if you guys did see Conclave, I want to know what you guys had to say. Do you guys like it? Did you think it was absolute dog shit? What did you guys think? Because I'm curious. I am curious if this is going to piss off anybody that is super religious or what it is, because, we got plenty of movies coming out that are from right-wing crackpot religious studios. There's one that's going to be about, I forget what the hell the name is, but it's from Angel Studios. Oh boy, but this is really, really good shit. lush cinematography, great cast, great acting. Really, the conclusion, I was like, okay, cool, we're going with that. Anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, basically, Bellini has his own ideas, like, progression, and about gay marriage, that kind of stuff. He's the most progressive of them, but he also is going to be fighting the system of the fact there's a lot of old views, a lot of stuff like that. There's Ade, Lucien's character, that it seems like the big favorite and does seem charismatic enough and does seem like, oh, okay, cool, we can elect our first ever black pope, but, and that's their mindset and everything. Who knows what actually happened back in history, by the way, but nevertheless. What ends up happening with him is as Ralph Fiennes is going through all this stuff and figuring out all this, it all ties back to the Pope's room, which after the Pope was, after he was found dead, we find out, Jasek's character, we find out with John Lithgow, we find out with everybody had an audience with the Pope, but all this stuff's going to come home to roost. But they seal off the room. They seal it off with ribbons and the red stamp that they do for some stuff. They did that. Now that is going to come back to play a little bit later when we get closer to the finish. I really should stop doing so much wrestling speak, but nevertheless. Ralph Fiennes is very conflicted because His Holiness would not accept his resignation so he could go back and live a quiet life, do whatever. He would always see him as a manager, but not so much as a leader. Not the leader of a flock, but a manager. So manage. And Isabella Rossellini also is, I guess, like the head nun, which didn't sound dirty in my head, but I'm just going to roll with it. And Ade seems to be the one that everybody's really, pulling for, even though Bellini, like I said, has the most progressive views, but also there's Tremblay, John Lithgow's character, who seems to be aiming for all this and keeps denying that he's involved in one particular thing, but Ade seems like the one that's gonna be here, and then it turns, there's this nun from Nigeria, Lagos something, it shows up, and suddenly it leads to an unraveling because it turns out that 30 years before he had been with a nun, and it turned to him fathering a child, and the child doesn't know who the father is and all this stuff, and basically he just has this breakdown because he wanted this to be kept secret. 2, he wanted to find a way to become Pope, but he will not become Pope. And because Lawrence does have a position of power, and also is overseeing this conclave where they're sealed off. They're sealed off. They can't be part of the outside world. They can't be influenced by the outside world, even though there's some, terroristic activity going on that's going to factor into something a little bit later. So Lucien's character was kind of the favorite, but then that ends up falling down. Now, Tedesco, Sergio's character, is instantly charismatic and everything, and, trying to talk to Lawrence and trying to butter him up and butter up various people and everything, and being a little boisterous and all that, but being seemingly nice. Well, it turns out he's very, very bigoted. Very bigoted. Good grief. There is one particular scene where he is really bigoted where I'm like, oh boy, and I'm not talking about the actor. I mean, maybe the actor is. I don't fucking know. I don't really care. I'm talking about the character. But as Lawrence continues to investigate, it turns out that Bellini, maybe as progressive as he is, knows that he can't win, so he has to align with a particular character. Tremblay continues to deny that he is involved with a lot of the stuff that he's accused of, like, like something that's found once Lawrence is unseals the room and checks out all the stuff and everything. And Isabella Rossellini, she realizes there's a reason why he's doing that. He's looking around. He's even crying at one point because he sees the Pope's glasses and sees all this stuff because the room's untouched except after he broke that seal. Then he finds something behind the bed frame, so to speak. And it turns out there's stuff about money and buying votes, and Tremblay basically was bribing people. I mean, how is he bribing people? How is all this stuff going on? Other dirt on various people, because the Pope, it turns out, didn't really trust any of the people he worked with. Okay, rude, but he also wasn't wrong for how he did that. But Tremblay denies all this stuff. But then it all does come home and, again to roost, where there's this big scene. They're all gathered. This is after numerous votes, by the way, where the votes are fluctuating up and down. Lawrence gets some votes and then goes down, and Bellini's kind of plateaued, so to speak. And Tremblay just finally, he just realizes that he's been caught and all this, and he tries to deny it, but then he finally confesses because he's a man of God, and it just all basically just beats into his head. But Isabella Rossellini has really, really good, delivery here, like some really good stuff, really powerful. I didn't write down every single piece of dialogue because even though I'm kind of giving some vague spoilers, I really do want some people to check this out and let me know what you guys thought. But Benitez's character, we got to go back to the beginning. Not to the beginning of time, because that would take a while and we would be at the Big Bang. And I do not have a theory about talking about the Big Bang. Hate the Big Bang Theory, by the way. Benitez was in Afghanistan and had seen quite a bit of stuff. And also seems to be not latched on to Lawrence, which sounded, again, less dirty in my head, but Lawrence also is somebody that kind of took to Benitez like, okay, turns out he is a cardinal. Maybe he knew the Pope, or maybe he met the Pope, or maybe the Pope was like, to bless him, whatever it is. There's a lot. I mean, unfortunately, they do have some subtitles for the different languages: Spanish, Italian, French, and all that. Now, Benitez ends up, voting for Lawrence. And Lawrence eventually realizes, as the dominoes are falling, it's either Tedesco or it is Lawrence. And before that, he's like, I'm asking you not to do that. We could go with Tremblay, but then Tremblay falls. So now we've got all this stuff going on. During one of the votes, a bomb explodes. And that would lead to Tedesco basically showing just how much of a full-blown bigot he is. He is no man of God. Because if you're going to believe a storybook like the Bible, you are going to appreciate people and, understand that we all have flaws, but come on. But he basically calls it a true religious war, and basically calls them animals, essentially. That's what he calls. He calls a certain subset, he calls Muslims animals. That's basically what he does. Now, that being said, what leads to that is Benitez says, this is the first time I've been here. It's likely the last time, but I'm going to talk about this. Like, he talks about all this great stuff going on, in the world that we just need to see. That no, not everybody is perfect. That we can bring people to the light. We can do this. And the church isn't this, it isn't that. The church is what we do next. An honest view. A view of something where if you're going to have a religious component, you are going to try to push the world forward. So, it's Tedesco, it is Lawrence, and all this stuff's going on. All this stuff's going on. Benitez gets selected as the new Pope. Now, there was this other bit of the story about a trip to Geneva, a trip to Switzerland, a trip for some kind of medical thing that didn't end up going to, and what the hell's going on with that? So Benitez is selected as a new Pope, and it's a big deal. They're, the smoke, it's like, oh, about to be, the new, going to be announced, going to make it official, all that. But then Jasek's character comes in and says, I've been meaning to tell you about this, and all this, the medical stuff, in Geneva. And then the big bombshell is Benitez basically says, when Lawrence talks to him, that he always felt that he was different than other men and this kind of stuff. And even though he had faith, you got to have faith, baby. It turned out that he had male and female organs. Okay, didn't expect that, because Isabella Rossellini even said, we're not supposed to be seen or heard, but God gave us, ears and the ability to talk, or words to that effect. But Benitez reveals that, which I was like, okay, didn't expect that, because I've never read the book, so I don't know how accurate this is towards the book. But I was like, okay, that's one way to push the church forward. It will push people to the brink of insanity because it will interrupt their view. But he reveals that, or they, he, I keep referring to as he. I apologize if I got that wrong. Talks to Lawrence, this kind of stuff, says, I was going to get that, but the Pope said, no, you don't need to do that. You are as God made you. And then that's it. Yep, he's a new Pope, and Lawrence is staying on to help, I assume. We're not getting a sequel. We're not getting Conclave 2, Benitez Boogaloo, but Conclave wraps up, and we have that. That is the show right there. So that is the movie. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I'm giving this an A+. It was very good. Great. So there's a shot with people while it's raining, and there's like shots of like, you know, the rain falling, and there's just these white umbrellas and these red outfits, and just picturesque. It's a scene that's going to stick out of my end. It's so simple, but it's just so good. A+. Terrific performances, great cinematography all around. This was really, really good shit. Is it going to be on my favorite films of the year list? Probably. How high? Don't know. Seen some good shit this year. Seen a lot of stuff I got to sift through. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle, and letterbox handles in the description. I'm John Rentlund. I'll see you soon.